Welcome to Syntax. Today we have the State of Frontend survey results, and Scott and I are going to go through it. Some interesting stuff in here in terms of like what frameworks are people using, how are people writing CSS. It's a really great survey because it kind of gives you a glimpse into what are people actually using and what are people moving towards. And it gives there's like almost 7,000 people have taken, or 6,000 people have taken this response from 139 countries. I think it's a pretty good look at where the industry is at right now. So we're going to go through the result and sort of talk about our surprises and what we think about the future of web dev. My name's Wes. With me, as always, Mr. Scott Tolinsky. He's doing great today. Probably not as great as possibly could be. But we want to talk to you real quick about Sentry. Sentry is the error exception performance insight tool. We've heard us talk about them a million times. Basically, you got a website that's buggy, slow, you got issues. Sentry is going to give you insights into why that is and help you fix it. Check it out, sentry.io/syntax.
Word.
Yeah.
One thing I really like about this survey is that it feels like it's out of our bubble a bit, where some of the state of, React or whatever, those tend to feel like a survey that's representative of my bubble in web dev.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see information from what could be considered like a wider breadth of the industry.
Yeah. With survey is always going to be like skewed in some direction, but for this one, it seems to skew way heavy Asia, Europe. Like out of the 6,000 people that replied, 3,000 from Europe, 1,200 from Asia, and then only 1,000 from North America. So I think that is pretty good. And like, fair point. I never heard of the survey before, which is good. Maybe it shows a little bit of a different look. So let's start with the framework aspect of this. This is talking about what frameworks have you used in the last year. And also the results of the survey are kind of nice where they're relatively simple. It's just like, did you use it and like it? Did you use it and dislike it? Or the opposite? And the most used and liked framework is React, coming in at 70%, and then 15% use and dislike, which you can kind of expect that. I think that's not that surprising, but Svelte's got what, 25% used and like out of all respondents? That seems really high. In Vue, 44.8% used and like, which is great.
I like this interface where it shows the darker outline around, because you can see that like very clearly at a glance that Svelte has the highest percentage of want to learn in the future, which is great.
I was going to point that out, which is like, what do people want to learn? Like, what are people using now? React, Svelte, and Vue. But what do people want to learn? HTMX pretty high as well. Svelte extremely high. I think is Svelte the highest one in want to learn? It is.
It is. And
Let me tell you should learn it. It's great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we use it. Actually, what? One thing this turned into a little Svelte love sesh here, but the one thing I really enjoy most recently about the transition to Svelte 5 was that the migration assistant worked on the first try and only gave me like 5 files to touch after the fact, which is pretty substantial given the changes. Yeah, it worked really super well. It was maybe the smoothest migration I've done on anything, and let's face it, I've done a handful of migrations. Mm-hmm. What's also interesting here is that HTMX is number 2 for want to learn, but also some of the highest for not interested and no opinion, and only 7% for used and liked. So HTMX gets like the hype award, right? It has hype because it's the second most wanting to learn thing, but in reality, but then again, it's new. So 7% is probably a big jump up from where it was in the past. It is wild to see that something that most people weren't aware of like 2 or 3 years ago is now this high. Meanwhile, something like Phoenix, which is fairly mature, and even like Alpine JS is only at like 7 and 1.8%. So yeah. Oh, and Quick
Ember,
too. Quick
Ember,
at 4.1. Yeah.
I think like LinkedIn is one of the biggest users of Ember. I wonder who else is any big other sites on Ember.
Yeah. Did you ever learn Ember? Did you ever pick it up?
Slightly. I touched upon it. It was kind of like during the like Angular, we were all kind of coming off of Backbone, looking at Angular, and then Ember
Yeah.
was one of the big come ups from it. We had dinner with someone worked at LinkedIn after the meetup, and he was saying Ember's great, but it's a little bit different, and like there's not a ton of documentation on like bugs and stuff outside of, well, luckily inside of LinkedIn they can reference all those people because they use it quite a bit internally.
Man, I did one of the first tutorial courses I ever bought was from, I don't know if you remember, Peep Code.
Yes. Yeah.
I bought a course from Peep Code on Ember, and I took it on the airplane to somewhere. I forget where. Maybe even I forget. I took it on the airplane somewhere, did the whole tutorial course, and like left being like, all right, I could do Ember. I can see how this works. Yeah.
That's how I learned Express from Peep Code as well. He had a really cool tutorial about like making pies and most recent pies and WebSockets, and I remember watching it on an iPad at the gym. This is like one, like you have like those core moments in your like web development history. You just remember where you were when you learned something. And that was one of them. That's a weird remember that I have.
Yeah.
But let's talk about rendering frameworks, which is like basically you have like React and Svelte and Vue, but like what frameworks do you use on top of it? Most used Next, and then basically half of that. So Next is 52%. Half of that is Nuxt and Astro coming in, and then SvelteKit at 17%. Remix only 12%, which I'm always surprised at the numbers behind Remix. I always think that they would be much larger, but just goes to show that like when something big catches on, it's quite slow to move on to something else.
Because that said, Astro kind of also showed up. It was one of those ones that you felt like, how are they going to differentiate themselves? At first being a static site platform, then just like the whole thing being you can use any front-end framework. To me, that wasn't super compelling until it's really evolved into like maybe one of the smoothest full stack frameworks to work in. And again, SvelteKit has the highest want to learn in the future, which is pretty great for that team. I think it's a good product. Yeah. I don't know too much there. Gatsby with the lowest. That's also not shocking, given that where Gatsby's trajectory has been. I'm surprised it's even at 9.4% of people wanting to learn it. But hey, let's take a look at state management, because outside of the Vue and Svelte world, the state management picture is a little bit more complex, as we've talked about a lot of times on this show. And so a lot of these are React-specific options, except for Pina. I thought it was Pina, but at Pina, I think we had the same conversation last time. Either way, the highest, most used and liked is the React Context API straight to the DOM. That's the highest used and liked.
Straight to the DOM.
I get it. It's simple. But I still would want maybe it's a little something more,
It just goes to show that, like, come on, React, give us something better. The Context API, it's okay. Set state, put it in Context API, but there's all these like gotchas and downsides to it. But obviously, that's what people are actually using. ZooStand, Redux Toolkit coming in at a fairly close tied second. And then MobX only at 8%, Jotai at 11%. So ZooStand quite a bit more popular than Jotai.
Yeah. That's actually not that. ZooStand came first, and it was kind of one of the first alternate ones. I am surprised that MobX is so low, given at one point felt like it was between Redux and MobX as being the two major choices in the space. And Redux, obviously the most popular one. But you'd think after being around for so long and having an approach that's more similar to like what we're doing in Solid and Vue, that MobX would, be a little bit higher.
Can I quiz you on the next one? Don't look at the other libraries, or have you? Okay, so I'm going to quiz you on the next one, which is, what other libraries have you used in the last year? So I'm gonna rattle off the 6 libraries I have here, and you have to guess which is the most used and liked, and the most not interested. All right.
Okay.
So what is the most used and liked library between Lodash, jQuery, Immer, RxJS, Ramda, and Underscore?
Jeez, that's a quite a a bunch of things. So the most used and liked out of all of those,
Yeah.
Gosh. Oh, man, that's a tough because
Or maybe we'll ask this. What's the most used
jQuery.
not liked or disliked, but just used entirely?
Yeah, jQuery.
That's not actually. So jQuery
Okay.
is a close second, but Lodash coming in at 70% of used. So
I can see
like
that.
maybe we're finally starting to see the slow unuse of jQuery. I know that like it's been gone for like 10 years or so, but people still use it. People have existing applications, and that's a frustrating thing sometimes about the bubble is people don't realize that like you pick tech and you work with that tech for many years, especially when it's such a low level choice like writing all of your JavaScript in jQuery or picking a library like React.
Yeah, I'm gonna say for the other one, it's probably for the least used or whatever. It was like least
the
interested?
most not interested.
Most not interested. I'm gonna say Immer, only because it feels too niche.
Yeah, I think Immer has the highest no opinion because I don't think anyone even knows what Immer is.
Okay, then what about since Lodash was the highest? Then what's the underscore? We'll say underscore.
Yep, it's underscore. Yeah, so 30%
We'll
of people are not
opposites
interested
there.
in learning underscore.
Which makes sense.
Very close under that is jQuery though.
I don't even know what I'm using. I would use Lodash for today anyways that I couldn't just hit myself. Yeah.
I have like the opinion of Lodash is not bad. You just reach for the methods when you need it. And I almost always when I run into somebody using Lodash, I think I could write that in some of the newer methods or whatever. And there are like some weird use cases where you're like you have to like pick and whatever, but even there's all these new JavaScript methods that allow you to intersect arrays, find which items overlap each other, find which items are not included in either. Like there's very few use cases unless you're doing some pretty heavy data stuff where I think you even need it. And that's not to say it's bad. Lodash is fast and it's well tested and all of that stuff, which is great. But when I see it used, I often think, I don't think you needed to pull that in.
That's how I feel too. And I do reach for Just. People who we've talked about Just on this show. We'll link it up in the show notes. But Just is a good alternative because you can just grab one or two methods or anything that you need straight out of Just instead of bringing in a big old platform or something. Okay,
well,
cool.
That's not true because Lodash for the longest time you've been able to load just the method you've needed from Lodash-ES. But I almost do as well. So the one time I do reach for it is debouncing and throttling, where I'll install just debounce or just throttle, and because like I hate writing that myself, it's too complex.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know what the sizes are. I think what attracted me to Just is the fact that the sizes of all of these things are measured in bytes. They're
copy-pastable. Yeah. They're published by their own self. You don't have to. It's not like part of a library where it reaches in for other utilities.
Word.
So it's very copy-pastable.
Let's talk about data. I think data is an important one, how we're bringing in data to our applications. This one's shocking to me. 73%, the highest used and liked is Axios. I gotta say, why? What are we doing here? Yeah. That to me is kind of wild. I just never have needed it. I don't get it. I know you used it and liked it, Wes, in the past. But in the same regard.
So we did an entire show on why do people still use Axios, which is episode number 453. Go to syntax.fm/453. Why do people still use Axios over Fetch? And we detail why people still do it. There are some use cases, which is like interceptors and expired JWT tokens and validation status and all that. But again, I don't find myself reaching for Axios all that often, but it's higher than native fetch.
I know. What's up with that?
Yeah.
Man, native fetch isn't hard. I get it that there's some niceties from Axios, but like, is it that hard to implement those that you got to bring in a library for it?
Yeah.
I think
there even is some there's like an Axios like library that gives you the pieces that people use. Like people want to set their auth headers once.
Yes.
Or people don't want to have to double JSON,
Yeah.
especially with TypeScript. And like the answer to that is, well, just write a wrapper function. But Axios kind of is that wrapper function. So I think there are alternative libraries that sort of give you that Axios wrapper without the baggage of the whole library.
Yeah, word. Isn't that actually, no, is that KY? Is that what that library is? KY.
Yeah, I've
NPM.
not.
As you're describing this,
before.
I was looking at it and I was thinking, I'm pretty sure that's just KY. It's from Prolific Package out there. Sanjay Soras, delightful HTTP request. It is a simple HTTP client based on fetch specifically. So I do think that's what this is.
This is probably what you want.
Yeah. But nobody knows about it. 66% of people, no opinion on this thing. So give KY a check. I don't feel like I need it or want it, but if you're reaching for Axios, KY might be a good option. As far as other ones we tend to encounter here, I'm pretty stoked on the fact that TanStack query is so high at 43% if used and liked. When we talked to Tanner, he certainly made me like a believer in all the stuff he was doing. So yeah, it's nice to see that doing well. Apollo client kind of holding on there a little bit. 25% is not nothing, but yeah, I haven't heard about Apollo in a little while. I don't know what their status is, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know as well. It's been a while since I've used Apollo. It's sort of, I think, like all things GraphQL, went a little bit more enterprisey because that's sort of where the use case for a lot of GraphQL stuff is. Hosting. Can you guess the top hosting providers?
Ooh, top hosting providers.
And keep in mind, like this is like JavaScript, primarily front end people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one, I think Netlify is going to be on there. I think Vercel is going to be on there.
Yep.
I think DigitalOcean is going to be on there. Cloudflare and AWS, I guess.
Yep. DigitalOcean not on there, surprisingly.
On there.
So number one, Vercel, 36.2%, and then AWS 32% under that. So more people using Vercel over AWS, which makes sense. I'm just surprised. I know I keep saying this, but like, I'm so surprised Amazon has not made a Vercel like experience. And every time we say this, people come out and say, "Yeah, but there's AWS. What's their equivalent?"
Oh God. And why you say this, Wes, it's so funny. I went to like log in to pay my bill on AWS the other day, and I got hit with this login. Here's the new sign-in UI, and somehow the new sign-in UI not only looks like the same as the last one, but it's somehow just like slightly worse. I don't know what's going on. And then I went to like go through the billing experience, and I was just like, how have they managed to make this such a maze? How have they managed to make just finding where my credit card information is like so many clicks and such a maze to get to? I really truly don't understand it. It is shocking. Even Google, though, Google's developer platform site and Azure's developer platform, yeah, they're all just, I've already railed against it a couple of times, but man, they're rat's nests of all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
The hilariousness that I'm forgetting what AWS's like continuous integration thing where you like push a git commit and it rebuilds it and deploys it for you. The fact that I'm forgetting what that is called, which I'm sure you're screaming at it right now.
I know what it is, by the way. I can tell
What is it?
Amplify.
Yeah, Amplify. That's it. Okay. And the fact that I was searching for AWS deployment thing or AWS Vercel alternative, and that did not come up once.
Yeah.
They just have so many products. And like, come on, you got to think they could put a couple hundred people on this and build it.
It is kind of wild that DigitalOcean didn't show up. I feel like at some point they would be very high on this chart.
Yeah.
Just given where they've been in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. DigitalOcean's app platform is specifically like what we're talking about, which is like a platform as a service, right? It's not, you don't get a Linux box and log in and install Node. You just like set up some config file and you give it your Git repo and it will build. And that I've used that a couple times, but it never really took off as much as I thought it would. Cloudflare Pages though is Again, that's Cloudflare's equivalent to that. It's higher than I thought it would be as well, 10%.
Yeah, 80% of people using continuous integration right now. I don't know what the other 20% of the people are doing. Like, are you FTPing and dragging and dropping? What's the alternative to continuous integration in these days?
rsync,
logging in and git pulling and then running.
Well, like, you laugh, but if you sign up for AWS serverless functions, like their initial interface for deploying a serverless function is upload a zip file of your serverless function with your node modules in it. Like, that's their interface for that. And obviously there's way better ways to do it, but like, that's your getting started. Yeah. But the CI, GitHub Actions, 70%. Like, remember back in the day, everyone used Circle CI or Travis?
Circle CI, Semaphore, Travis. There's
7% Travis.
I used a bunch of these, and I never liked any of them. Why it makes sense that Google or GitHub Actions were able to just do it. It is one of those things that we talked about, especially in the Copilot episode that we just recorded, where if you can put things closer to Git and GitHub where people are already using GitHub, then GitHub will take over. And I think this is a prime example of it. It's not like GitHub Actions are the most friendly, fun thing to work on in the world, but they certainly do the job. It just goes to show you, just make it free, make it available. People are going to use it and just take over that platform entirely. I haven't reached for anything else. I do a ton of GitHub Actions on most projects, so definitely myself included into that.
Have you used Micro-frontends? This is kind of an interesting one because the whole Micro-frontends thing is, I keep hearing about it. I keep talking to people about it at conferences that are from larger companies, but it's not something I've dipped into. And I think that this is a show that we need to have a guest on for, because the whole idea of like microservices was very popular, right? And now we have this idea of micro front ends where you have different teams building different components that then come together. And then there's this whole Webpack module federation thing where you can share code between them. I think that we need to, we'll ask you this, dear audience, is who do we talk to about micro front ends? I've had a lot of people reach out about the topic, but it's almost always that they're from a company trying to hawk their thing. And that's sometimes fine, but I'm always hesitant to do that.
I'm always hesitant to do that as well. Yeah, the micro front ends thing seems to me a problem or a solution to solve a problem that you and I just will never face because we don't have many different large code bases.
3,000 JavaScript developers on staff.
Legacy, tons of components, different skill levels, different departments. I mean, that's just not a problem we're going to hit. So it does seem like kind of a hairy solution to me. I feel like it's a better solution to just get everybody on page writing the same thing. But man, that's probably not practical.
It probably is, but you're not ever going to do that and move fast enough where people can get their work done.
I know it's such a dumb guy view of it. Well, why don't we just all use the same thing? all 5,000 of us.
Great idea. Yeah. Let's just scrap every piece of tech that we've built our entire business on for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I could do that. Next one, package managers. NPM, no doubt, 56%, easy peasy. Yeah. I'm surprised that Yarn is still at 21%. I felt like Yarn had such a big fall from grace when they had their whole V2 thing came out. I felt like that was going to be an Angular 2 moment for them, but it seems like they're holding on. PNPM, that's what I use. It's at 19.9%. I like PNPM. There's occasionally some little weird things with it, but for the most part, PNPM handles a lot of stuff really well. And I don't know. I don't want to speak out of ignorance here. Yeah. But in NPM workspaces, do you have to define all of your packages in their version as workspace, version? Because one feature that I've been really liking in PNPM workspaces is to treat all packages, check for the packages first in the workspace without having to put workspace in the version. You just put the version like normal in your package.json, and it will check the workspace first, even without the word workspace in the version, meaning that I can use the same dependency like line of code to pull from both npm when it's somewhere else, but also from my workspace if it's within my workspace itself in my mono repo.
Yeah. I don't know the exact answer to that, but I do know that the PNPM one is a little bit simpler. I recently went and tried to deploy my entire course platform to Dino deploy just to see, can you act like, so they were like, we have full node support now, blah, 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 and I was like, all right, bet, let's try like this huge node app that I've been working on for 10 years. That's a massive mono repo and there's multiple workspaces, or there's multiple workspaces in it. So I use PNPM to manage my workspaces, and obviously deploy it to Dinoplay, they're going to use NPM or they're going to use their NPM equivalent. And the thing I had to change was that I use like workspace : star in my package JSON, which is really nice because it just finds the folder that all top level folders. You want to add a new package, you just add another one. I had to change it to explicitly stating all of the workspaces in there.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But aside from that, I don't think I try not to do anything that is specific to your package manager because I want to be able to run it with NPM or with PNPM. That's part of the reason why whenever a project uses Yarn, like I was trying Redwood JS out the other day and it uses Yarn and like it wasn't installing properly. And I was like, oh, like I have the wrong version of Yarn installed. Yeah. But Yarn also now comes with, what's the thing? It comes with Node. What's that called? in Node, where Node now ships the package managers as well.
I remember that was a whole big controversy when they added that to Node. It was like the Yarn team specifically was really pushing for it, which I can understand why. It's their product. They wanted alternatives. And by the way, the PNPM package setting, for people who are wondering, because I mentioned this, is a setting called Link Workspace Packages. If enabled, locally available packages are linked into Node modules instead of being downloaded from the registry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's basically like, again, you just use the versions and it automatically does linking instead of needing to put workspace in the version, which is nice.
All right, it's called CorePack. So CorePack is an experimental tool that helps with managing versions of your package manager. So this is interesting because your package manager can specify which version of your package manager to use. So if you have one node installation, or you have one project that needs a specific version of Yarn to run, and another one that needs a different version of Yarn to run, you can use different versions of Yarn and PNPM on a different one without having to do the whole switcheroo every single time. And I know everyone's saying, just use Docker. No, I will not use Docker for that type of thing.
I think I get experience
my pain.
A little bit closer to using Docker every day, Wes. I think that is that's my future here. I'm going to be one of those guys like a year from now. It's like, I love Docker.
It's so funny because I have like 9 Docker images running on like servers. I have a local running, but like on my own computer, I just don't feel like doing that.
I'd rather go to several places to start my database itself, to boot up my server and then boot up my UI. I'd rather just run all those processes individually in a haphazard manner.
I don't want to download the like 47 gigabyte Docker file every time I want to run something.
But Docker's crazy.
I get it.
Let's look at runtimes. We talk a lot about runtimes, but 96% of people are using Node. Oh, because this is a multiple choice. I'm wondering, like, how are people using Bun and Node? Okay, so Node at 96%, Bun at 10%, which is the second highest. Dino, kind of a shocking 2.6. Dino just works, y'all. It is really nice and smooth. I think Bun is just like a little extra sprinkles on top, but Dino just works to me,
Yeah, I think the Bun is a bit more. It's kind of like the HTMX answer, is it's a bit hyped. I think a lot of people are using Bun for their tooling and their build as well, just in like as an alternative to PNPM or Yarn or something like that, right? So you're seeing quite a bit of that as well. I'm surprised to see that so much higher than Dino though, which is just from like, I haven't heard of anybody actually running Bun in production just yet. I've seen people use it, like even on Cloudflare pages, you can use Bun to build your website and then deploy it to Cloudflare pages. So you don't run your website in Bun, but you can use it as the build tool.
Yeah. Let's talk about build tools. TypeScript, 96% or 90% of people have used TypeScript. Not surprising, given, it's, I guess 90% is a lot. 90% is a lot.
That's
I guess
almost
that is
everybody.
maybe a little bit. Yeah. So if you're not on TypeScript and you're one of those people that's holding out, you are part of the 9.4%. It is funny. Anytime we post things on YouTube, we occasionally get comments from people that are like, TypeScript's a waste of time. And it's like, okay, buddy, that's you. You're one of the people here who are in that 9%.
Yeah.
But yeah, 94% of people used and liked TypeScript. Used and liked. 94% used and liked.
But the amount of people that are still using jQuery and everybody is 90% on TypeScript is amazing, right?
Yeah, that's amazing,
so there's
yeah.
Does that mean I would have thought the nose would be a bit higher because of legacy stacks, just simply can't move it over to TypeScript, but maybe people are just starting to opt in to writing the new pieces in TypeScript and then consuming the old JavaScript versions as they need it.
Yeah, 2.2% of people used and liked Flow. So if you're one of the people who held on to Flow, then yeah, good luck there. I do hear occasionally there's some nicer things about Flow, but yeah, not nice enough for me to jump on that bandwagon here. That's a little bit too small. 53% of people said that TypeScript overtook JavaScript and became the new front-end standard. I believe that JavaScript will turn into something like TypeScript. 16% of people agreed with that statement.
What do you think about that?
Whether or not it will turn into something like TypeScript, I do believe that we'll get some sort of types as comments as that proposal was, where we can write types and it will run as JavaScript. And we did get TypeScript running support within Node. It's in all of the other JavaScript runtimes. It kind of feels like JavaScript's going to turn into something like TypeScript at some point.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll ever get actual types as part of the engine.
Right. Actual types, yeah.
From an authoring perspective, I think we will get that, where we can write types in JavaScript and then you can simply consume that via anything. You should be able to run a typed JavaScript file in the browser without it having a syntax error, meaning the engine should be able to strip out those types before it runs it. And then I think that we'll see, once we get that, we'll start seeing some tools that are TypeScript ish, a new typed version of, we'll see tools built on top of that to sort of formalize what that looks like. And maybe we'll all standardize on one way going forward. That might be TypeScript, might be something else. We'll see.
There's also 1.9% of people who are still holding on to everyone will soon forget about TypeScript. Yeah, that's going to happen. That's about as likely as AI just going away next week.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, folks.
Browser technologies, 82% people using the Fetch API, which I guess other people are still using Axios.
Hey, before you even go on from that, I don't know if you noticed, Wes, but in the front of each one of these sections, there's an expert who gives a little...
An expert, yes.
Yeah, an expert. And actually, the one before this was Daniel Rowe. Shout out to Daniel. He was at our syntax meetup in SF, so it was nice to meet him. But guess who wrote something about Fetch? It was me. I wrote something on here. Yes, Fetch. It's both surprising and unsurprising that Fetch has 82% usage rate. On one hand, it's amazing how quickly we've standardized on Fetch, which is simple enough that most users don't need external dependencies. That's me putting in my Axios dig right there. On the other hand, we don't usually move that fast. That was my little... I had some paragraphs. Actually, they tightened it up for me. I'm not a gifted writer. So their staff looked at it and gave it a little editorial. But this is my words for the most part. So read my little sentence here in this thing if you want. Yeah. Other things noted, a lot of these APIs that got usage, even though they're still under 50%, are a lot of the things that, I think we're going to see more of because they're more native app-like features, whether that is the storage, API, even just using service workers or caching APIs, web workers, IndexedDB, file system API.
Full screen.
Full screen, yeah. These things are going to get more ubiquitous. They're going to get more available. The one that is kind of crazy is that 3.5% are using Houdini, which... What part of Houdini are they using?
No
I
one's
don't
using
know.
Houdini. Like maybe with it making a demo, but
I disagree. I think that people are using @property occasionally now, and @property is like probably one of the
is that part of Houdini?
That's part of Houdini. Yeah.
Okay, so
yes.
Maybe we can explain what @property is. Do you want to give a stab, or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, I'll give a stab. It's basically, you can think of it as like types for CSS variables. So typically when you define a CSS variable, you're just saying, here's the variable, here's the value. And that doesn't tell CSS or the browser a whole lot about what that value is. And with this @property rule, what you're essentially doing is you're taking like 4 lines of code to define a single variable, as in here's what the variable is, here's the type of the variable, is it a number or what, and then here's a default value for it. Now the cool thing about that is because you know what type it is, it makes interpolating those values possible by the browser. It's the thing that makes it so. The classic example is I can with @property I can animate a gradient. That's what's cool about it. But yeah, I think for the most part, it's just types for your variables.
The other good use case, or that I've used @property for, is in a keyframe. If you want to, instead of changing a property in a keyframe, like for example, a rotate value, if you want to update a rotate value in a keyframe, you have to say transform, rotate, whatever. But the downside to that is if you have other transforms, then you're overwriting those by just simply putting transform, rotate, whatever. And what you can do with @property is you can just update the variable in the keyframe. So you could say -- rotate value 20 degrees. And then wherever that variable is referenced, by default, it will just snap because it doesn't know what the type of the CSS variable is. But with @property, you can say this is a length or a percentage or a degree or something like that. And then the browser will know, oh, this keyframe updated a variable, which is a degree. I can animate degrees. So then it will actually give yourself the smooth animation or transition that you're looking for.
Yeah. Counterpoint, I just use the transform properties, like rotate as a property.
Straight. Is that in all the browsers now?
Oh,
because
yeah.
It was for a while. I remember talking about it on this podcast like 5 years ago.
Oh, it's big, and it has been.
But like that's great if you are straight up doing it. But if you are using like that variable in a calc or something like that, I want to turn this to 12 degrees, but I need to calculate something else based on that value. Then it gets a little tricky because you simply just want to update a variable, and anything that is then reactive to that variable does it. So let's look at the update. What is it? Rotate.
It came into believe it or not, it came into Firefox in 2020. It came into Safari in 2021, and it came into Chrome in 2022. It has 94% global usage, which is massive.
So you can use that now.
Yeah, you can use it.
So you can just straight up use the rotate value, which is good because it's annoying to, even if you're not using a keyframe, it's annoying to have to write transform, rotate. I'd rather just say rotate 2 degrees.
Yeah. Do that, folks. Progressive web apps. Most people think the popularity will slowly increase. I agree with that. The APIs are coming in slowly to all browsers and everything like that. You can now install apps on your home screen in the correct ways on many platforms now. So yeah, I think PWAs will continue, but I think it's more or less like the feature set of PWAs are going to become more just generally used rather than people focusing on building a PWA progressive web app. Like for instance, I mean, like now the stuff I do always has the progressive web app stuff about it. It has a service worker, it has a manifest file and an icon and a theme color. It works offline. It does all the stuff that a progressive web app should do. But I've never sat down and be like, let me progressive web appify this thing.
Yeah, you're just using features that will be handy, throwing stuff into the cache. So I hope so. We built a little PWA for the syntax at GitHub Universe. We had a little iPad on the table, And it was just looping through the syntax shorts that we had and had a big syntax logo and some of the links. And it was meant for like people walking by were able to be like, oh, syntax, I've heard of that. And then they would sort of come into the booth and then we'd sell them on Sentry. But I built just a little web app for that. And then I used some of the features like tinting the URL bar and being able to bookmark it and putting the icon on there. One thing I didn't do is I wanted to figure out how to store the .ts files of a HLS stream. I want to figure out how to store those locally in the browser so that if the Wi-Fi were to go out, the video would keep looping.
I got something for you, Wes.
Yes.
This is going to be good. Don't look at the styling tools one yet.
Okay.
So given the options, which you can imagine, most of them, plain CSS, Panda, Sass, styled components, Stylus, Tailwind, those types of things. Which is the most used and liked? And then actually I'll give you give me 1, 2, 3.
Most used and liked ways to write CSS.
Yes.
I'm going to say vanilla.
Number 1, vanilla.
Tailwind. And I'm going to say Sass because nobody hates Sass.
I'm going to be that was really good, Wes.
Really?
You got all 3 of them correct. You got the order wrong. It's plain CSS, then Sass, then Tailwind. Which, man, props for nailing all of those. I mean, it's easy to think about potentially any of these other hyped ones, but in reality, what else is there? CSS modules is the next highest one, which is pretty predictable that it would be CSS modules. And then after that, styled components. Shout out to Max, who was also at our syntax meetup.
Yeah.
Author of Styled Components. He's great to talk to. But yeah, Stylus, sadly enough, 3.5%. 56% of people have no opinion on it. They don't even know what it is. 30% of people not interested. Rest in peace, Stylus.
This is a really good one to just look at awareness of what is out there, right? We've talked Panda CSS on this quite a bit, but I think it looks like almost nobody even knows what that is. And yeah, Tailwind's huge, Sass is huge, and the Sass one is interesting because we did a show on can you drop Sass, and almost all of the features of Sass can be done in plain CSS, nesting scope. In fact, they're even better in plain CSS because they run in the browser.
Yeah, and soon, who knows, if we get mix-ins and functions, then that's all she wrote right there. I guess maybe loops, but yeah.
It's going to be, even there are some features, maybe we should do an update as to that because there are now style queries that have come out. There is now a proposal for mix-ins and functions in CSS. Miriam Suzanne's working on. We should let's do that episode again because when we recorded, we said there is nothing, but hopefully one day. But now we have proposals for those last few bits, and especially with the style queries, which is part of container queries, but it allows you to essentially do if statements in CSS.
Yeah.
If this Boolean is turned on, then apply all of this CSS.
Man, gotta love it, right? Yeah, gotta love it.
Testing. Who is responsible for testing your software? Developers and QA. Mostly developers, mostly QA. So 10% of people saying mostly QA. So yeah, that's more than I thought. Remember we talked about that on a previous episode. Is I didn't think that many people had dedicated QA, and turns out that quite a few people still have dedicated QA.
Yeah, QA big. People often are using unit tests primarily, then end-to-end, then integration. I personally do most things in end-to-end just because of makes sense in a browser context. To me personally, that said, I know unit testing is the standard for just I'm going to learn testing. Let me learn how to test a function. And I'll still do occasional unit tests, but mostly it's now just running the app in something like Cypress, which has 42% usage here. And Playwright, 36% usage, which I thought Playwright at this point would start to overtake Cypress for some reason. I couldn't tell you why. And I do want to say I am happy we're using Playwright on the syntax site because, well, not just because of this, but one of the, I don't know if it's the creator of Playwright or one of the guys who works on Playwright, did a code review of our PR.
Little audit.
And like updated our things. It was like, your test will run faster this way. It was like, man, that rules. Thank you. That's so cool. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, I actually had somebody email me the other day asking like, how do I test this? And they had like a user uploads a PDF and the PDF is parsed and then the parsing values gets fed through this next thing. And they're like, there's no way for me to like unit test some of the functions. It's just written in such a way. And I think that unless you were to do a bit of a rewrite and sort of modify everything, the end-to-end testing is maybe your best bet to have some sort of security in that this thing still works when you finish making updates to it.
Yeah, for real. And, they often have like test recorders, which is nice, where you can just click around the site and it'll record your actions and write the at least like the navigating parts of using your thing. And that way you just have to write the expecs or whatever. I expect this to do that.
Code editors, 75% using VS Code, about 18% using JetBrains. I also, the other day, JetBrains announced the ability to have a free access for non-commercial use, which I think is huge because like a lot of times people say, why don't you use JetBrains? I don't want to pay for it. I think that's a big move for them. You can now get WebStorm, PHP Storm, all of these storms, the JetBrains IDE series for free if you're non-commercial. So if you're just doing a side project, you want to check it out, you can get it for free, which I think that's really exciting to see that. 3% on Vim. Not even 1% on Sublime anymore. Poor Sublime.
I know. Hey, and guess what? It's over for VS Code. Cursor has officially killed VS Code by not showing up in this chart at all. Didn't we have somebody leave a comment like, too late, Cursor's already got it or something?
Oh, yeah. I was tweeting all of the stuff that was announced at GitHub Universe. And like I'm no GitHub stan, I'm no VS Code stan. I like it. I'm here for whatever's the best.
I'm a GitHub star, so I have to like
switch. It. Yeah, Scott has vested interest. I got no vested interest, but people are like too late. I was like, brother, I think you're underestimating the fact that like GitHub owns all this stuff.
Yeah.
The heavy hammer, the number of poor souls that have used Microsoft Teams because they use Outlook for their email is extremely high.
For real.
Versus Slack. It might not be the best, but like, I don't know. I'm rooting for Cursor, but I'm rooting for VS Code as well. I think it's way too early in this code editing game to even decide a winner.
Yeah, for real. And again, it's not even on this chart. So
yeah. Browser code editor, CodePen coming in high, Code Sandbox, StackBlitz, JS Fiddle 10%. This surprised me. I would expect to see GitHub Code Spaces on here. I would expect to see maybe Google IDX on here, like the hosted VS Code versions rather than this. But it seems like people are maybe not using those. Although, like I heard the other day, Shopify has all of their devs working in the browser in VS Code, right? It's just like a IT breeze. You don't have to worry about access and having code on their local machines, all of that stuff. But it seems like from these answers, like CodePen, you're posting cool CSS demos. Code Sandbox, you're posting your broken code. StackBlitz, you're posting your demos. And JS Fiddle, you're posting a 10-year-old Stack Overflow answer.
Accurate. Very
accurate.
Is that accurate? It's deadly accurate, yes. It's perfect.
And Replic's one of these things that I keep seeing it. It seems to be getting really popular. It seems to be big in the AI space. I need to give that a fair shake because I feel like it's becoming extremely popular outside of my bubble. And those are always interesting to me. It's when people who are learning web development do something different than what people who are in web development, because that might be the next thing,
Yeah, totally. A couple last ones. Build tools. Vite, by far, taking the cake. No surprise. Vite rules. Big fan of Vite. Second place is ES Build. Wow. Third place is Webpack. So Webpack, really feeling the heat now. Linting tools, ESLint. Everybody's using ESLint. Everybody's using Prettier. 30% of people are using and liked Stylint. We use Stylint, and I like it. It keeps Wes
Highly
Boss
recommend,
in check. Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I've also been using Markdown Lint a lot lately.
Oh, okay,
and it does a good job at both formatting my Markdown nicely, but also telling me when I'm doing bad things, like not nesting the levels properly. The poor thing, go back to the last one, which is Webpack, is almost as many people use and dislike Webpack as use and like Webpack, which is a bit of a shame, but it's just like Webpack has become such a huge thing, and the API is not easy to sort of reason about. Whereas like with Vite, you almost don't even need, for a lot of projects, you don't even need config. You just use it. And then if you do need config, like it's not hard. Like I have a 120 line Vite config, which is pretty complex, and it was a joy to build. I was really happy about that.
Yeah. Word. Operating systems. Majority of people on Mac. Yes. What's up?
That's kind of interesting to me. Like I think most people are not on a Mac. If you were to actually gauge, I don't know. What would you think? You think if you took every developer building JavaScript, do you think they would be mostly Mac?
Yeah. I mean, I'm so biased here. I can't give you a straight answer because I'm going to just say yes. That's what I like and prefer. And I think it's a smoother experience for me. But I mean, you often hear people being like, who even uses Mac? I mean, a lot of people using it. So
I wonder if we were to poll our audience, I bet it would be like 72% Mac.
Really?
But I bet if you were to poll the wider audience, you would get a bit more heavily Windows.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wrap it up with the future trends. In your opinion, which of the following trends will gain popularity and which will die? So the highest trend of popularity is performance. That's great to see. Responsiveness.
Wait, it's highest.
Oh no, developer experience.
User experience is 90%. Whatever that means. User experience how is that different from developer?
Yeah.
It's like how it is for the people using your application. Sure. Yeah, user experience. We want them to be faster, smaller, quicker apps. I guess that all falls under user experience, right?
Responsiveness. I'm hoping that doesn't mean like responsive CSS. I think everybody's writing responsive. That probably means like what I'm reading for this, performance is high, responsiveness is high, server rendering is high. I think that what that means is that we're focusing on how do we make these apps fast and feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So what will lose popularity? GraphQL. 50% of people think GraphQL will lose popularity, which I think I agree with. Not because it's bad. Again, it's just not the tool for absolutely everybody. I think it's clear where the use cases of GraphQL shines. Micro-frontends about tied. 30% think it will gain and 30% think it will go down. It's a pretty good split.
Yeah, missing on here, local first stuff.
Yes.
Where's the local data stuff on here? I think that kind of falls into several of these things, just individually, but nothing specifically. Mm-hmm. I think that's something they should be tracking here.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it. An interesting look at where we're at with the whole web development scene right now. I always love going through these and just getting a good feel for where everybody's at.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, again, outside of our bubble, I think is important here. So cool survey. I was really stoked to be a part of it. So shout out to all of the folks who put this survey together and including me in it because it was nice to do this kind of thing. So shout out to State of Frontend 2024. Give it a check. Let us know what you think. How accurate do you feel like this is? If you're out there and you're listening to us talk about this, do you feel this is accurate? If you do or don't, leave a comment below. Best place to comment on YouTube. While you're there, feel free to give this thing a thumbs up, a like, a follow, a share. Send it to your grandma. Do all that stuff. So thank you so much. And
Spotify also now has comments. Spotify had comments for I don't know, probably about 6 months, a year now, but you could never reply to them. So it was just like people would write stuff. And you'd be like, cool, I have no idea who you are or how to reply to you. But now you can actually reply to comments on Spotify, which I think is pretty cool as well. So if you're in Spotify, leave a comment as well.
Word. Sick. Cool. Well, let's get into sick picks and shameless plugs. Do you have anything today?
Yes, I'm going to sick pick the Flighty iOS app. So I've been using a app called Flight View to track flights for probably 10 years now. And someone put me on to using Flighty, which is a beautiful iOS app. It's one of these ones that's just so well designed, has all the features, really nice tracking on it, gives you all kinds of cool stats. I used it for my last 2 flights. And I was like, this is fantastic. Gives you stats on like historically, this flight has always been 12 minutes late into the gate or early, and it updates it, and it puts your flight information right on your home screen as like one of those, like, I don't know what that's called in iOS, but like when you're doing something,
it's like an action of some kind.
Yeah. If you're shopping for Instacart, it will like show you where your person is, or your Uber will show up. It does that with Flighty. And I think it's a pretty nifty app. It's one of those like Tapbots or whatever. They build beautiful apps. I feel like it's in that range of good apps. And I didn't pay for the paid version. I used the trial, and then I don't know if I would pay for it, but apparently you can also just buy it for a week, which I love, because if you are going on a trip, shell out for a week of this. It's gonna make your life a little bit simpler.
Yeah, I am going to sick pick something from our holiday gift guide episode that Wes brought to my attention.
Ooh,
yeah. So you had shared a candle warmer lamp. Man,
yes.
I got Courtney a candle warmer lamp for her office, and what was so funny is that was like I was trying to get it without her noticing it, obviously, but it's coming in from Amazon, and like it was as at my son's soccer practice. It's like 5:30 or getting close to 6. The package arrives, and I have 5 minutes to get home. In fact, I'm on my way home when the package arrives, and I'm like, I gotta intercept that package. I know Courtney's making dinner right now, so therefore I should be good to go. I walk in the door. She's already got the candle warmer hooked up and using it. She's like, hey, did you buy this for me? I was like, no.
Was it supposed to be a Christmas gift?
Yeah, it was going to be a Christmas gift for her office. She's like, did you get this for you? I was like, no, I got it for your office for Christmas. And I couldn't believe it. It's like 5 minutes, and she somehow not only opened it, but got it going and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, they're great.
I love it. The one thing about it is that as you use it, the smell comes out of the candle, but the candle doesn't burn down as quickly as the smell gets away, and it makes your candles last way longer than if you were to burn them. But also you wonder, like, where's that going? Like the wax is, I guess, going into the air, being burnt.
Isn't how all candles work, though?
Yes. But I have been looking into, can you just buy candle scents and put them into the wax because you end up with this candle that has no more smell in it after like 3 or 4 weeks of using it. But you still have wax left. So you can, I'm curious if you can just
essential
buy
oils, I bet. Yeah, you just drip some
don't use
essential
essential
oil.
oil. That starts a fire. Yeah. Yeah, don't do that.
Okay.
I thought so too, but I looked it up. Essential oils have alcohol in them. They're not the right thing for candles. Will catch on fire. So
All right. Lesson learned
Yes.
there. Yeah. Cool. I'm going to shamelessly plug Syntax on Blue Sky. We're on Blue Sky, bluesky.app. What is the URLs for Blue Sky? It's bsky.app, but what is for Syntax? Is it at Syntax?
Syntax.fm.
Syntax at syntax.fm. We'll make sure we have a link to that in the show notes. Profile syntax.fm. Check us out. We've been posting there. I've been posting there. It's a man. Besides just being a Twitter alternative, right? Which I think that was like the big selling point at first. It's a Twitter alternative, but there are some legitimately awesome forward-thinking features that they should have figured out at Twitter like 10 years ago. So shout out to Blue Sky for being, I don't know, there's a lot of neat stuff going on there.
Yeah, there's a good community on there. It feels like old internet, And I know we did a show on it like a year and a half ago, and it kind of fizzled out, but now there's like a second wave happening that seems a lot more significant. And there seems to be a lot of like web development talk on it, which is exciting to me because like Threads also did it, but I find a lot of the talk on Threads is just why people don't like Twitter. And like, I just want to learn about CSS. You know, I'm coming because there's people talking about web development stuff here. And I feel like that conversation is really good on Blue Sky right now.
It's great. Everybody's here. The vibes are immaculate currently. Before all of the the grifters and who knows what has arrived. But
I did get one in my. So there's a Discover feed, which is like an algorithm based thing that tries to show you things that you like. And I did get like a history cool kids or some sort of like one of these things that just posts like photos of interesting things like Facebook slop. And I was just like, oh no, here it comes. Here it comes.
Here it comes. Yes,
so,
I know.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually.
Another thing, Wes, block lists are public, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
Really?
You can see who blocked you. Luckily, nobody who I know or care about has blocked me. So,
oh, that's cool. I guess it has to be though because of the decentralized nature.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff. And by the way, we're having Dan on the show.
Yeah,
Dan Abramov, who works at Blue Sky, formerly of the React team,
inventor React. Yeah,
really, really stoked to talk to Dan about this. So, yeah, Blue Sky, what's up?
All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you later. Peace.
Peace.